They told you the Great Reset is coming. But they lied. The real reset already happened 54 years ago. And unless you understand what happened in 1971, you'll never understand why your money keeps losing value, why everything, from rent to food, gets more expensive, and why no matter how hard you work, you always feel poorer. Because that year, quietly, without your vote, without your consent, the foundation of the global economy was rewritten. 1971 was the year the rules changed. Let's rewind. For centuries, money meant gold. If you had gold, you had wealth. If you didn't, you couldn't just create it out of thin air. That simple rule kept kings, bankers, and governments in check. But then came the 20th century, 2 world wars, trillions spent on weapons, and a world drowning in debt. After the destruction of World War II, leaders gathered to rebuild. In 1944, representatives from 44 nations met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their goal? Design a new global financial order. The Bretton Woods Agreement was born. It said, every country's currency would be pegged to the U.S. dollar, and the U.S. dollar would be pegged to gold at $35 per ounce. This meant the dollar wasn't just paper. It was a promise, a certificate you could trade for real gold if you wanted. And because America held 2/3 of the world's gold after the war, everyone trusted the system. But there was a problem hidden inside that promise. By the 1950s and 60s, America was spending more than it earned. Wars in Korea and Vietnam, massive welfare programs, and growing corporate subsidies meant the government needed to print a lot. But every dollar printed had to be backed by gold. So here's the paradox. The more dollars the U.S. created to fund its expansion, the less gold there was to back each dollar. Foreign nations started noticing. By the late 1960s, countries like France, led by President Charles de Gaulle, called the bluff. He said, "We no longer want your paper dollars. We want gold." Ships literally left New York Harbor loaded with gold bars bound for Europe. America's gold reserves began vanishing, billions flowing out, month after month. And behind closed doors, Washington panicked. If too many countries demanded gold, the U.S. Treasury would run dry. The entire Bretton Woods system would collapse. And that's exactly what happened next. August 15, 1971. President Richard Nixon appeared on national television. He told the world he was taking temporary measures to stabilize the economy. But what he did wasn't temporary. In one televised address, he closed the gold window permanently. From that moment on, the U.S. dollar would no longer be backed by gold. You couldn't exchange paper for metal anymore. You could only exchange it for more paper. Nixon said it was to protect the dollar against speculators. But what he really did was end the last connection between money and reality. That night, money became debt, and the Great Reset began. What does fiat mean? It's a Latin word. It means by decree. In simple terms, money exists because the government says so. It has no intrinsic value, no backing, no limit, only faith. Before 1971, if a government printed too much money, gold would leave the country until the balance was restored. After 1971, there was no restraint. Money could be printed infinitely, and it was. The world entered the fiat era, a new financial religion. Look at any graph of global debt, inflation, or inequality. They all bend upward after 1971. Why? Because when money is unlimited, debt becomes unlimited too. Governments realized they could fund wars, programs, and bailouts, not with taxes, but with newly created money. Corporations realized they could borrow endlessly to buy their own stocks and inflate prices. Banks realized they could lend infinitely because central banks would always bail them out. And ordinary people? They became the collateral. Your savings, your pension, your salary, all tied to a system that constantly dilutes itself. From 1971 to today, the dollar has lost over 85% of its purchasing power. In 1971, one income could buy a home, raise a family, and save for the future. Today, even 2 incomes struggle to cover rent and groceries. That's not inflation. That's design devaluation, the hidden tax of the modern world. When the U.S. dropped gold, the rest of the world had no choice but to follow. Every nation's currency was tied to the dollar. So when the dollar lost its anchor, they all did. Within a decade, every major economy adopted fiat money. Now, Central banks didn't need gold to print currency. They just needed confidence and computers. The age of digital debt began. And just like that, the old system of value, built on gold, restraint, and scarcity, was replaced with a new one built on credit, control, and consumption. But here's the genius move, the one most people never hear about. After the gold link broke, the dollar risked collapse. Why would anyone hold dollars if they weren't backed by gold? So the US made a deal with Saudi Arabia. In 1974, Washington promised to protect the Saudi monarchy in exchange for one thing. Saudi Arabia would sell its oil only in US dollars. Every barrel of oil on Earth would now require dollars to buy. It didn't matter if you were France, India, or Japan. If you needed energy, you needed dollars. The dollar had just found a new backing, not gold, but oil. This was the birth of the petrodollar system, a system that made every country dependent on the U.S., not through military power, but through monetary necessity. It was brilliant, and it trapped the world inside America's financial orbit. With the petrodollar in place, the U.S. could print money freely, and other countries would still accept it. Why? Because they needed oil, and oil needed dollars. This created a cycle. The U.S. prints dollars. Other nations earn dollars through trade. Those nations use dollars to buy oil and to buy U.S. government bonds. The U.S. government uses that money to fund deficits and wars. It was a loop, elegant, powerful, and almost invisible. America could export inflation and import real goods. In return, other nations got paper. And for 50 years, this system ruled the planet. But every empire built on debt eventually faces the same problem: confidence. When your money isn't backed by anything real, it survives only as long as people believe in it. And belief can fade fast. Since 1971, the world has seen the 1973 oil shock, the 1987 stock market crash, the 1998 Asian financial crisis, the 2008 global meltdown, and now, record inflation after 2020. Each crisis bigger than the last. And every time, the solution was the same: print more money. The cure became the disease. After 1971, something else changed, something psychological. Before the reset, people saved. After the reset, people speculated. Why? Because saving money stopped working. When your currency loses value every year, saving becomes punishment. So people chase returns, stocks, crypto, real estate, anything that moves faster than inflation. The result? Booms and busts. Wealth concentrated in assets, while wages stagnate. The rich grow richer, not by producing, but by owning the system itself. And for the first time in history, money became digital debt, created with keystrokes by central banks and commercial lenders. The connection between work, value, and money was broken. Now, when people talk about the Great Reset today, they imagine some future global plan, a meeting of elites deciding humanity's fate. But the truth is, it already happened. 1971 was the original Great Reset. It reset what money meant. It reset who controls it. And it reset the relationship between citizens and the state. Before 1971, governments needed your taxes to spend. After 1971, they just print. Before 1971, debt had limits. After 1971, debt became the system itself. Before 1971, money represented value. After 1971, money represented obligation. The system didn't collapse, it evolved. And in doing so, it changed everything you think you know about wealth, poverty, and power. In this new system, central banks became kings. The Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, they now control not just money supply, but global liquidity itself. Every crisis, every recession, every boom, all managed by interest rates and digital printing. And above them, institutions like the IMF and World Bank coordinate how nations borrow, lend, and survive. It's not a conspiracy, it's architecture. A network designed to ensure the system never truly resets. It just reinvents the debt. After the gold standard ended, inflation became permanent. You can change governments, you can change leaders, but prices always rise. That's not failure. That's the design. Because in a debt-based system, you can't have deflation. If prices fall, debts become unpayable, banks collapse, and the system implodes. So inflation isn't a bug, it's a feature. It slowly transfers wealth from savers to borrowers, from the public to the financial elite. And every time inflation gets too high, they raise rates, not to fix the system, but to keep you busy surviving inside it. But here's the twist. Every system eventually reaches its limits. The fiat experiment has been running for over half a century. Global debt now exceeds $315 trillion, more than 3 times the size of the global economy. That's not sustainable. So now, they're planning the next step, a digital version of control. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, programmable money, and the shift toward a cashless world. They'll say it's for convenience, safety, and modernization. But the truth? It's the evolution of the same system. A system where every transaction, every loan, every purchase can be monitored, taxed, and if needed, turned off. The next reset won't be a revolution. It'll be an upgrade. For them, not for you. You think your money is yours. It's not. Every dollar, every rupee, every euro is someone else's liability, a promise that depends on confidence. Lose that confidence, and it all evaporates. That's why history keeps repeating. Every empire, Rome, Spain, Britain, fell not because they ran out of gold, but because they debased their currency. They printed, they borrowed, they spent, until one day, belief died. And belief is the only thing holding the modern world together. No school will tell you that 1971 was the most important year in modern history. They'll talk about wars, politics, and technology, but not the moment money stopped being real. Because once you understand that moment, everything else makes sense. Why housing is unaffordable. Why debt is endless. Why inequality grows no matter who's in power. Why inflation is forever. It's not a failure of policy. It's the design of the system. Let's recap the 4 pillars of the 1971 reset. 1. End of the gold standard, money detached from real value. 2. Birth of fiat currency, infinite creation of money through credit. 3. Rise of the petrodollar, U.S. dollar dominance through oil trade. 4. Global debt expansion, every nation locked into the same system. Each piece fit perfectly, each crisis strengthened it, and each generation forgot how money used to work. So today, when people say the Great Reset is coming, they're half right. It's not coming. It's continuing. Every stimulus package, every bailout, every quantitative easing is just the same reset, looping again and again. Because the architects of this system don't want stability. They want motion. They want dependency. They want control. So the next time someone tells you that money is safe, that the system is strong, that things will go back to normal, remember this. Normal ended in 1971. Since that night, every paycheck, every loan, every price tag has been part of a design older than most people alive today. The Great Reset isn't a future event. It's the world you already live in. You just didn't notice when it began, because they didn't announce it with sirens or speeches. They announced it with silence and a smile. And when you finally understand that 1971 wasn't just a year, but a turning point in human history, you'll start to see the truth. Money doesn't rule the world. The system behind it does. And that system was reset long ago. If this changed how you see the economy, if you finally understand why nothing ever seems to fix inflation, why governments never stop borrowing, and why the debt only grows, then you're starting to see the machine for what it really is. Subscribe if you want to understand how it was built and who's still running it. Because they're not going to teach you this in school. They'll teach you economics. They'll teach you numbers. But not the moment money died and debt was born.